Hi, everybody. I'm Pamela D Wilson, caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. We are here for the next part of our module, which is the connections between chronic disease. Throughout this part, we'll talk about why chronic diseases happen, how they're relevant, and I'll share a story about caregivers going into the homes of elderly to provide support with these types of subjects. Let's start, as usual, with our housekeeping. I use the term elderly parent or elderly parents. You can substitute that term with the person for whom you are caring. The outline for this module is in the course materials for the programs. Do print the slide handouts for each section so that you can make notes. I will occasionally ask you to pick up a pen and write some information down so that we can follow along together. The objectives of the connection between chronic disease. You should be able to classify the most common chronic diseases, distinguish between prevention and disease management, and reinforce daily preventative actions with your elderly parents. One of the things that I commonly say is we are healthy until we are not. The prevalence of chronic disease in the United States is skyrocketing. Skyrocketing, skyrocketing, skyrocketing. One would wonder why we pay so little attention to chronic diseases when the number of diseases are so significant, when the number of people that have chronic disease is so significant, and when these diseases have an effect on ADLs, IADLs, and QOL. QOL is another medical speak term that means quality of life. ADLs, IADLs affect our quality of life when we are older. Why don't we pay attention? It's really simple. When we're in good health, we think that good health lasts forever. Some of you still may be healthy. You may not have a single health issue, and you could be 30, 40, 50 already. But when something happens, all of that changes. As a society, as individuals, we're also busy living and working and going about our lives that we don't pay attention to small issues that don't really pose an immediate requirement for our attention. This means that we're healthy until we're not, and then not being healthy attracts our ongoing attention. I was lucky to learn about health in my teens. My fantasies about being healthy were shattered because my mom was affected by heart disease for as long as I could remember. Beginning in her 40s, she began to have heart issues that started with high blood pressure. In her 50s, she gained weight, experienced falls, fractures, more heart issues, more medical appointments. At the age of 60, which is young, she had quadruple bypass surgery. My mom passed away 9 years after that surgery at the age of 69 from sepsis that was the result of surgery for bladder cancer caused by smoking. She smoked cigarettes all of her life. For my mom, smoking resulted in heart disease, stomach issues, mini strokes, difficulties performing ADLs and IADLs, and bladder cancer that ended her life. Back then and still today, we don't relate chronic disease to long-term health effects, to potential physical disabilities, to difficulty performing ADLs and IADLs, and eventually needing long-term care. If you learn nothing from this module, it's the importance of protecting your health beginning very young in life, because health is priceless. Being able to do the things we want to do is priceless. Having health issues makes every day difficult. So let's talk about what is a chronic disease. A chronic disease is a condition expected to last 3 months or more. Vaccines don't prevent chronic disease. Chronic diseases are not cured by medication, although they can be managed by medication. Chronic diseases require ongoing medical attention. They can limit activities of daily living, as we discussed. They can result in physical disabilities. And And once we have one chronic disease, one physical disability, it seems to begin this circle of poor health and the diagnosis of new chronic diseases. Go ahead and pick up your pens because I'm going to give you a list of the most common chronic diseases. Are you ready? Heart disease, stroke, cancer, any type of cancer, chronic lung disease, which could be COPD, could be bronchitis, could be asthma. Obesity is a chronic disease. Memory loss, Alzheimer's and dementia. Diabetes, arthritis, epilepsy, dental cavities, chronic disease, and chronic kidney disease. These diseases individually may not be life-threatening, but they sure can result in aches, pains, and difficulty with daily functioning in our middle and especially our older ages. Once we're diagnosed with a chronic disease, we might have difficulty believing that, oh my gosh, this is happening to us. We may get stuck in negative feelings and have difficulty moving forward with any type of plan. What does being stuck look like? Looks like this: losing interest in activities, feeling sick, being tired, feeling down, not being able to sleep, avoiding things you would normally do. You're in a bad mood, irritable, disagreeable, impatient, and you want to isolate instead of being with your family or friends. I want to share a story about chronic disease and the relation to day-to-day life for older adults. I had a care management business and I had an in-home care business. In both of these, me, my staff, or caregivers would go into the homes to help my elderly clients. My first client was a lady named Loretta, and she lived home alone, and she had macular degeneration, which means that she couldn't see forward, so she couldn't see this way, but she could see peripherally, so she could see sideways if she turned her head. But she had lived in her house a long time. Her husband had passed away. She knew how to get around. She knew exactly where things were. What we did for her, because of her sight issues, was we went grocery shopping once a week. On that day, we prepared meals for an entire week for her so that she could take them out of the freezer and have fresh food and not necessarily have to rely on TV dinners or canned foods or things like that. But we marked the containers. We would put them in Tupperwares, and we would put paper on top with a big letter. And the letters were like things: S for spaghetti, M for meatloaf, because she could see those letters out of the side of her vision and she could warm them up. Other things we did were, we did her laundry. We changed the sheets on her bed. We did a little bit of housekeeping, but all during the time that we were there. The big thing that we did was talk and visit with her. She lived alone. Her kids would call and they would visit. She had very good kids. But, being alone all day, unless you are listening to something or talking to someone, it can reduce your cognitive ability to remain engaged. She was delightful. She was funny. She was hilarious. Enjoyed her immensely. She lived until, I think she was over 100 by the time she passed away. Truly one of my favorite clients. But these are the types of little activities that you as a caregiver can do, that you can hire in-home care agencies to help with if you're time limited. And believe it or not, having another person in the life of your elderly parent, it's enjoyable for them. They have a new friend. They've got somebody that hasn't heard all of the stories that you have heard as a child, or all the stories that you continually tell to your mom, things that you chat back and forth with. It's like having a new person to entertain and a new friend. And the friendship is nice for parents. Companionship is a very important thing for elderly parents who can't get out of the house and who don't have a lot of friends. So let's keep going. I'll take myself off the camera. So we have an opportunity. We can prevent chronic disease, we can manage chronic disease, or we can take pills. Prescribing medication is the usual course of action for a doctor upon diagnosing a chronic disease. If the chronic disease is diagnosed in the very, very early stages, you're lucky. In that situation, not taking medication may be an option if you or an elderly parent is willing to make lifestyle changes to improve that condition. If the disease has gone beyond the initial stages and medication is not optional, then talking about learning how to manage the condition with your doctor so that you can minimize the future consequences is the best goal you can create. Here's kind of how it goes and why this doesn't always happen. Patients expect doctors to tell them everything they need to know. It doesn't work that way. First of all, doctors don't know what you don't know. Doctors expect you to ask questions about what you don't know. If you don't ask any questions, they may think that you don't care. Your doctor may think that you're not interested. It's up to us as patients. We have a responsibility to ask about the chronic diseases and the prescription medications being prescribed, how they work, what we can expect, how they can help with the condition, if there are side effects. So many questions to ask. Prevention, it's up to us. Taking a pill, it's up to us. Changing lifestyles to minimize future consequences, it's up to us and our elderly parents. Lifestyle changes are a choice. No one can do this for us. No one can make us want to change our lifestyle choices. As chronic diseases progress, the effects on the body become more noticeable and they become more physically debilitating. They affect us more on a day-to-day basis. Each chronic illness affects other body systems that we'll talk about. They lead to the diagnosis of new and more chronic diseases, which I suspect is exactly what we don't want. The summary of how chronic diseases connect: they begin slowly, which is why we think we're healthy until we're not. We don't notice them, or we don't notice the small signs. After we have a diagnosis of chronic disease, we realize that, again, we're healthy until we're not. We have a choice to make to become more educated, to take action. When we learn about chronic diseases and the consistent actions required to reduce the future consequences, we can make the choice. We can make the choice to take control of our health and take control of our well-being. I'm Pamela D Wilson, caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Stay with me for the next webinar. We'll be right back.